This video is about German resistance movements that challenged Nazism. Subscribe for more. Berlin, 1943. The city was a tapestry of fear and oppression, its streets echoing with the heavy boots of soldiers and the distant rumble of war. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and despair, a constant reminder of the Nazi regime's iron grip. Yet, beneath the suppressive facade, the spirit of resistance simmered, fueled by a collective yearning for freedom. Among the shadows, a small group of individuals dared to dream of a different future, one where the ideals of liberty and justice could once again breathe life into the German soil. At the heart of this resistance was a young woman named Anna Müller, a fierce and intelligent student at the University of Berlin. With her piercing blue eyes and unruly chestnut hair, Anna had long been disillusioned by the atrocities committed in the name of the fatherland. She spent her days surrounded by books and pamphlets, secretly gathering information about the regime's darkest secrets. Each word she read deepened her resolve, every statistic she uncovered fueled her desire to act. Her closest confidant was a former soldier named Klaus Richter. Once a fervent supporter of the Nazi Party, Klaus had witnessed the horrors of the Eastern Front, friends falling to the ground, blood spilling into the mud, and villages razed to the ground. The transformation from a naive patriot to a disillusioned soldier had left him a man on the edge, haunted by memories he could not escape. These experiences ignited a fire within him, compelling him to join Anna in a fight against tyranny. Their safe haven was an attic overlooking the bustling streets, a space filled with maps, books, and the faint glow of candlelight. It was here, amidst the clutter of resistance, that they plotted the next move. The two often met with other members of their clandestine group, known as the Kreisau Circle, a collective of thinkers and activists who envisioned a post-Nazi Germany founded on democratic principles. Each meeting was tinged with a palpable urgency, the clock ticking as the war raged on and the Nazis tightened their grip. At this particular meeting, tension crackled in the air. Anna stood before her comrades, brandishing a recent intelligence report. "The Gestapo's cracking down on dissenters," she announced, her voice steady yet laced with anxiety. "We must act quickly before they catch wind of our plans." Her words sent a shiver through the group, their faces reflecting the fear of discovery. Each member knew the stakes. Failure meant not only their demise but also the end of hope for those yearning for freedom. Klaus interjected, "We have to sabotage their resources. If we can disrupt their supply lines, we might have a chance to rally more support from the population." His proposition ignited a spark in their hearts, awakening a boldness that had been buried under layers of fear. The others nodded in agreement, their faces resolute, ready to embrace the perilous path ahead. Yet, lurking in the corners of their minds was a question of loyalty. Could they trust each other? The Gestapo were experts at infiltrating resistance movements, and any leak could bring disaster. Suspicion simmered, but the promise of a new future outweighed their fears. They forged alliances, their spirits burning with the desire to dismantle the regime that had brought so much pain to their lives. As the meeting came to a close, Anna felt the weight of determination settle on her shoulders. Their first mission was set, disrupt a major supply route for the German military. But as the group dispersed into the night, Anna could not shake the feeling that they were being watched. Outside, the cold air enveloped them like a shroud, the distant sounds of marching soldiers echoing ominously. Days turned into weeks as the Kreisau Circle meticulously planned their operation. They gathered intel from various sources, relying on their network of sympathizers. The stakes were higher than ever, each piece of information brought them closer to their goal, yet the risks multiplied with every passing day. The Gestapo's reach was long, and their paranoia grew with the realization that dissent was brewing beneath the surface. In a dimly lit cafe, Anna and Klaus huddled over a map, drawing lines and marking targets. "This red here," Anna said, tracing her finger along the path, "is where we will strike. We need to time it perfectly with the supply convoy. If we can destroy it, the military will feel the impact." Klaus nodded, his brow furrowed in thought. What if they have more men guarding the route? "We can't risk an all-out confrontation." His voice was low, a hint of worry lacing his words. "We'll use diversion tactics. Create a distraction, and strike when they're off guard. We have the element of surprise on our side," Anna replied, her resolve unwavering. As they finalized their plans, an unshakable bond forged between them. Their shared desire for freedom, their dreams of a new Germany, solidified their commitment to each other and their cause. But with every plan, they felt the looming specter of betrayal inch closer as whispers of informants haunted their gatherings. The date of the operation arrived, shrouded in a misty dawn that mirrored their apprehension. Anna's heart raced as she donned a simple coat, concealing her identity beneath layers of ordinary fabric. Klaus stood beside her, his jaw clenched in determination. With a nod, they joined their comrades, each carrying the weight of their mission as they slipped into the shadows of the city. As they approached the target area, the distant sound of trucks echoed through the trees. Each rumble intensified the tension in their chests. They climbed into position, hidden behind the thick underbrush, their eyes fixed on the road. Anna's pulse quickened as she watched the convoy approach, a convoy laden with supplies that fueled the Nazi war machine. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her eye, a pair of soldiers loitering suspiciously near the tracks. Her breath hitched. The tension was palpable. She shared a look with Klaus, who nodded, signaling for patience. Timing was everything. As the truck slowed to a stop, the soldiers began to unload. The moment was now or never. In that instant, the group's carefully constructed plan hinged on a single action. Anna felt a surge of adrenaline. They would not be silenced. They would not be afraid. As the soldiers began to chatter, Klaus gave the signal. A firecracker, a simple distraction, was tossed into the air, exploding with a deafening crack. The soldiers turned in confusion, panic flooding the area. In that heartbeat of chaos, Anna and her comrades charged, moving like shadows through the trees. But just as they reached the trucks, a sharp sound pierced the air. Gunfire erupted. The soldiers had recovered quickly, their training kicking in as they shouted orders and readied their weapons. The resistance fighters ducked for cover, the weight of their mission colliding with the reality of danger. Anna's heart raced as she scrambled behind a truck, her mind spinning with fear and determination. She had come too far to turn back now. The firecracker had given them a fleeting moment, but the enemy was quick to retaliate. Klaus was beside her, gripping a makeshift weapon, his expression fierce. "We have to keep moving," he urged, glancing back toward the advancing soldiers. "If we don't act now, we'll all lose everything." With nerves steeled, Anna nodded, her eyes blazing with a fierce resolve. In the chaos around her, the central conflict of their lives crystallized in that moment. The fight against tyranny was fraught with peril, but it was a fight worth undertaking. They were not just fighting for their own lives, they were fighting for the very soul of Germany. As they prepared to launch their counterattack, the air thick with tension, the fate of their mission hung precariously in the balance. Anna took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest, knowing that this moment would define not only their futures but also the future of a nation yearning to be free. But then, as their plan unfolded amidst the sand of chaos, a chilling realization struck her. A shadow loomed over their mission, a figure watching from the distance, cloaked in the colors of the regime. The game of deception and resistance had only just begun, and with it, the stakes had never been higher. Would they succeed, or would they fall into the hands of the very regime they sought to dismantle? The answer lay in the chaos that surrounded them, and with a sense of urgent determination, Anna prepared to confront the darkness, stepping deeper into the unknown. To be continued. Anna's heart raced as she peered around the corner of the truck, her fingers gripping the cool metal of her makeshift weapon. The chaos erupted around her, gunfire and shouts mingling in a cacophony of confusion. She could see Klaus moving with purpose, darting from cover to cover, rallying their comrades as they fought to reclaim control of the situation. The weight of their mission pressed heavily upon her shoulders, but there was no time for doubt. The soldiers of the Nazi regime were closing in, and every second counted. Anna scanned the area, searching for an opening. The sudden explosion of a nearby crate sent shards of wood flying, narrowly missing her. She ducked instinctively, adrenaline fueling her movements. "Klaus, we need to reposition," she shouted over the noise, her voice barely carrying above the din. Klaus nodded, his expression fierce and focused. "Follow my lead. We'll create a diversion." He motioned towards a stack of crates piled near the position. On 3. 1, 2, 3. They charged towards the crates, taking cover as bullets whizzed past them. Klaus threw a small incendiary device towards the far end of the supply line. It ignited upon impact, flames licking the air as a plume of smoke rose and engulfed the area. Klaus yelled, and they both charged forward, Anna's heart pounding as they engaged the enemy. The soldiers were momentarily distracted by the fire, and Anna seized the opportunity to push forward. She fired her weapon, the noise a stark contrast to the chaos that surrounded her. Another bullet whizzed by, and she ducked, instinct kicking in. The adrenaline coursed through her veins, igniting a fierce determination. They had to disrupt the supply convoy, or the fight for freedom would falter. Each enemy soldier they took down was a step toward reclaiming hope for their homeland. As they continued to press forward, Anna caught a glimpse of one of their comrades, a young man named Matthias, desperately trying to fend off an enemy soldier. Without thinking, she rushed towards him, her weapon trained on the soldier. "Matthias, get down," she shouted, and he fell to the ground just as she pulled the trigger. The soldier crumpled at their feet, lifeless. You saved my life. Matthias gasped, scrambling to his feet. Keep moving, Anna urged, glancing at Klaus, who was coordinating the retreat. The resistance fighters were holding their ground, but the tide was beginning to turn against them. The element of surprise was slipping away, and the stakes had never been higher. Suddenly, another volley of gunfire rang out, and Klaus staggered back, clutching his side. Panic surged within Anna as she rushed to his side. Klaus, I'm fine, he gritted through clenched teeth, but the blood seeping through his fingers told a different story. Anna's heart sank. They had come too far to lose him now. Get Hen to cover. Matthias yelled, grabbing Klaus by the arm and helping him stagger toward the trees. Anna followed, her mind racing. They needed to regroup, and fast. As they reached the safety of the underbrush, Anna quickly assessed Klaus's injury, ripping a strip of fabric from his shirt to apply pressure. We can't stay here for long. We need to get you to safety, she said, urgency lining her voice. I am not leaving you, he insisted, the fire in his eyes faltering. You have to, she urged, her voice firm but gentle. We need you. The Kresa Circle needs you. We'll find a way to finish this. Klaus looked at her, his resolve wavering. But before he could respond, the sound of marching boots approached, echoing ominously through the trees. The Gestapo was here. Anna's heart raced as they prepared to make their escape. Matthias, take Klaus to the rendezvous point. Ayello, create a distraction, she said, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her heart. We can split up, Klaus protested. We have to, Anna replied firmly. Trust me. I'll be right behind you. With a heavy heart, she watched as Matthias helped Klaus rise, supporting his weight as they slipped deeper into the woods. Anna took a moment, breathing deeply to calm her racing heart. She had to buy them time to ensure Klaus's safety. Glancing back toward the chaos, she noticed several soldiers pouring out of the trees, looking for any sign of the resistance. Anna's mind raced with possibilities as she spotted a stack of crates nearby. If she could create enough noise, perhaps she could draw them away from Klaus and Matthias. Gathering her courage, she moved quietly, calculating each step. As she reached the crates, she positioned herself carefully behind them, praying the soldiers wouldn't spot her. She grabbed a handful of rocks and began tossing them into the bushes, creating a ruckus that echoed through the trees. Over there, one soldier shouted, pointing towards the noise. Anna's heart raced as she watched them move toward her distraction. In that moment, she felt a surge of adrenaline. This was her chance. As the soldiers turned their backs, she slipped out from behind the crates and sprinted through the underbrush, her feet pounding against the earth. The soldiers shouted, confused, but Anna didn't look back. With every step, she felt the weight of her mission. She had to warn the Kresa Circle. They needed to regroup to continue their fight for freedom. But as she dashed through the trees, the sound of footsteps behind her drew closer. They were onto her, and her heart sank. She pushed herself harder, knowing the danger that lay ahead. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through her leg. She stumbled, falling to the ground as a searing pain engulfed her. A soldier had fired, the bullet grazing her thigh. Gritting her teeth against the agony, she forced herself to her feet. We'll get you, the soldier shouted, closing in on her position. Anna could hear the crunch of leaves and the heavy rhythm of boots behind her, a relentless pursuit. She stumbled deeper into the woods, desperation fueling her actions. Every instinct screamed at her to keep moving, to escape, but the pain throbbed with each step. As she navigated the dense foliage, Anna felt a rush of determination. She could not let fear control her. She had to fight. Klaus and Matthias were depending on her. Suddenly, she spotted a narrow path leading away from the clearing, overgrown yet visible enough for her to slip through. Heart pounding, she darted down the path, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind her, she could hear the soldiers faltering. The underbrush slowed them down, but they would not give up easily. Anna pressed forward, determined to evade capture, her heart racing with every step. As the path opened up, she stumbled into a small clearing, the sunlight breaking through the trees. There was a small shed in the distance. It looked old and dilapidated, but it might provide a momentary refuge. With her heart pounding and pain radiating from her leg, she dashed towards it, praying it would offer her a brief respite. She pushed through the creaky door just as she heard voices behind her shouting orders. Inside, the shed was dark and filled with the scent of dust and mildew. Anna leaned against the wall, clutching her bleeding leg and trying to regain her breath. Outside, the soldiers scoured the area, their voices growing closer. She needed to think, to plot her next move and gather herself. But as she steadied her breathing, a new tension gripped her heart. The fate of the Cresa circle was uncertain, and the fight against tyranny was far from over. She had to warn them to ensure they didn't fall into the trap laid by the regime. What awaited her next would determine not only her fate but the fate of a movement that had dared to challenge the darkness. She had come this far, she could not falter now. With renewed resolve, Anna looked toward the shed door, a plan forming in her mind. She had to rejoin her comrades to share the urgency of their situation. The fight for freedom was far from over, and she would do whatever it took to see it through. As she prepared to slip out into the chaos once again, shadows loomed at the edge of the clearing, and she braced herself for another confrontation. Would she escape, or would she face the consequences of their noble rebellion? The answer lay beyond the threshold, and stepping into the unknown was her only choice. To be continued. The shed creaked in protest as Anna cautiously pushed the door open, peering through the narrow gap into the clearing. The sound of footsteps echoed around her, but for now, the soldiers were still searching the tree line for her. The sunlight streamed in, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, a stark contrast to the darkness she felt surrounding her heart. The urgency of her mission filled her with a fierce determination. Klaus and Matthias depended on her. She needed to contact the Cresa circle to warn them of the tightening grip of the Gestapo. As she surveyed the interior of the shed, she noticed a few old tools strewn about, remnants of an era long gone. A rusty shovel caught her eye, a potential weapon or at least a means of escape. She grabbed it, wincing at the pain in her leg, and stepped back into the sunlight, her senses heightened. The soldiers moved like wolves, methodically searching every bush, every corner, and Anna felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. She could not afford to be caught, not now, when freedom hung by a thread. Remembering the plan from their last meeting, she recalled the old railway tracks that ran parallel to the supply route. If she could reach them, she could follow them back to the rendezvous point. It was risky, crossing open ground, but it was her only chance. With one last glance at the commotion, she took a deep breath, gripping the shovel tightly. She moved into the underbrush, blending in as best she could, her heart pounding in rhythm with the sound of her footfalls. As she navigated through the dense foliage, each branch that snapped beneath her feet felt like a warning bell ringing in her ears. Suddenly, a shout rang out from behind. A soldier had spotted her retreating figure. The world around her morphed into chaos as shouts echoed through the trees, and Anna sprinted toward the railway, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Heavy boots pounded against the ground behind her, urgency fueling her every step. Amid the sound of her own heart racing, she felt the rush of wind on her face as she burst into the clearing by the tracks. The rusted metal glinted in the sunlight, a stark reminder of the past. She could still hear the soldiers yelling, their voices growing closer, and desperation clawed at her throat. The tracks ran parallel to the supply route, and Anna knew that the old railway could lead her back toward the city if she could keep ahead of her pursuers. She dashed along the length of the tracks, her breath coming in quick bursts, her heart racing as she imagined Klaus's face, unyielding, determined. But as she moved, she heard the unmistakable sound of gunfire echoing through the trees. Panic surged within her. Had they found Klaus and Matthias? She pressed on, pushing the pain in her leg deep into the recesses of her mind. Each step put distance between her and the soldiers, yet the fear of losing her friends spurred her onward. Reaching a bend in the tracks, Anna paused to catch her breath, her body trembling with adrenaline and fear. She could see the distant outline of the city, its skyline marred by the war. The Cresa circle was counting on her to bring the warning, but she needed to gather her thoughts. She had to be clever, she could not allow herself to be reckless. As she crouched low beside the tracks, she quickly recalled the contingency plan they had discussed. If they found themselves cornered, it would create a diversion using the old railway signal system, which could draw the guards away, allowing them to regroup undetected. Anna's pulse quickened at the thought as she headed toward the signal tower illuminated by the fading sunlight. The tower loomed ahead, a relic of the past now shrouded in war-torn memories. Climbing the rickety stairs, Anna fought against her throbbing leg. Each step was a struggle, but she could not falter now. She reached the top, the view sprawling out before her, a panorama of destruction and despair. From this vantage point, she could see the supply route in the distance, the soldiers still hunting for her, oblivious to the fact that she had escaped. The sight ignited a fierce determination within her. She had to act. In the corner of her eye, she spotted the signal lever. If she could manage to pull it, it would send a warning to the circle, and perhaps even buy Klaus and Matthias some time. With blood pounding in her ears, she grasped the lever, her heart racing as she pulled it down with all her might. The sound of the railway horn blared through the air, startling the soldiers below. Anna felt a rush of satisfaction as she watched them turn, confusion etched on their faces. The commotion below created a perfect diversion. Now was her opportunity to escape. But as she turned to head back down the stairs, a sudden sound froze her in her tracks, a heavy footfall behind her. She spun around to see a soldier emerging through the door, his eyes wide with surprise. Time slowed as the two locked eyes, the air thick with tension. Anna's mind raced as she calculated her next move. Without hesitation, she swung the shovel toward him. The soldier barely had time to react before she struck him, sending him crashing to the ground. Heart pounding, she raced down the stairs, adrenaline surging as she fled the tower, her heart racing with fear and resolve. Outside, the confusion among the Nazi soldiers had created a crack in the facade of their power. Anna moved quickly, slipping into the shadows as she made her way back toward the city. Every instinct told her to keep going, to push through the pain and fear that threatened to consume her. She had to warn Klaus. She had to warn the Kreisau Circle. The winding streets of Berlin welcomed her like an old friend, yet the air was thick with tension. She ducked into alleyways and avoided main roads, her mind racing with thoughts of Klaus and Matthias, wondering if they had made it to safety. As she turned a corner, she spotted a familiar figure, Matthias, bloody yet resolute, standing by the entrance of an old bookstore. He called, relief flooding his voice as he rushed toward her. "Where is Klaus?" His eyes searched hers, filled with fear. "I created a diversion at the railway. He asked when he needs help," she replied, her voice urgent. Matthias paled, the weight of their situation settling over them like a shroud. "We need to get him to the safe house." There is no time to waste. They moved swiftly toward the back of the bookstore, where a hidden door led to the cellar. The dim lighting illuminated the faces of their comrades, each one echoing Anna's determination. As they descended, she felt the enormity of their struggle settle upon her. Each moment counted in this deadly game. "We need to regroup," Matthias said, glancing around as more members of the Kreisau Circle gathered. "The Gestapo is closing in. If we don't act quickly, we'll lose everything." Anna stepped forward, her heart racing. "We can use the signal system to lead them away from the safe house, create confusion. We can make our escape." "Are you sure it will work?" Matthias asked, concern lacing his voice. "If we coordinate it right, it could buy us precious time," Anna insisted, her gaze steady. As they strategized, a sense of urgency hung in the air. The fate of their movement rested upon their shoulders. They had fought too hard to let it all slip away now. The plans began to take shape, tactics discussed, and roles assigned. But as they prepared to implement their daring strategy, an unmistakable sound echoed through the streets, a voice, low and menacing, approaching their hideout. The Gestapo was on the hunt, and this time the stakes were higher than ever. With her heart pounding, Anna braced herself for the confrontation ahead. The fight for freedom had reached a critical juncture, and they would either rise together to challenge the darkness or succumb to it. The sound of boots drew closer, and in that moment she knew their resolve would be tested like never before. And as the door creaked ominously, Anna steeled herself for the inevitable clash, her spirit aflame with the hope of a new Germany. Would they emerge victorious, or would they fall victim to the very regime they sought to dismantle? The answer lay in the storm that was about to erupt. To be continued. Anna's heart raced as she exchanged tense glances with Matthias and the others, the low rumble of the Gestapo's approach sending a chill down her spine. The atmosphere in the cellar was thick with anxiety, the weight of their plight evident in each furrowed brow and clenched jaw. The door creaked ominously as the footsteps grew closer, and Anna knew that they had little time to act. With a quick nod to Matthias, she stepped forward, her voice steady but urgent. "We must create a diversion. If we can draw them away from here, it will buy us the time we need to get Klaus and the others to safety." The members of the Kreisau Circle murmured in agreement, their expressions shifting from fear to determination. Anna felt a surge of leadership arise within her, knowing that the fate of their mission rested on her shoulders. "Matthias, gather a few of our best marksmen. We need to position them around the perimeter." As Matthias set to work, Anna turned to Klaus, who had been resting on a makeshift cot in the corner, his face pale but his eyes sharp with resolve. "Klaus, you need to stay down. We can't risk further injury." "I won't let you face this alone," he replied, his voice strained but full of conviction. Anna felt a rush of warmth at his bravery, but she also recognized the need for caution. "Trust me, we need you to guide us, especially if things go wrong. Keep an eye on the others and be ready to move as soon as we clear a path." Klaus nodded reluctantly, a flicker of understanding passing between them. As Matthias rushed off to gather the marksmen, Anna gathered the remaining members of the Kreisau Circle. They huddled close, formulating a plan to outmaneuver the advancing soldiers. The tension in the air was palpable as they prepared their positions. Anna could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins, sharpening her senses. Once the soldiers are distracted, we'll all slip out the back and make our way to the old railway tracks, she instructed. We'll all regroup at the designated safe house. Minutes felt like hours as they awaited the Gestapo's arrival. At last, the door burst open, and a squad of soldiers stormed in, weapons raised and eyes scanning the dimly lit cellar. "Get out here, we know you're in here." The group sprang into action as Matthias and the marksmen opened fire from their concealed positions. Shots rang out, echoing through the cellar, and chaos erupted. The soldiers returned fire, but the Krasos circle had anticipated their strategy, and the element of surprise played in their favor. Amid the skirmish, Anna spotted a flicker of movement outside the window. She caught sight of Klaus, who peered through the doorway, a mixture of determination and fear etched on his face. "We need to move now." With a deep breath, she shouted to the others, "Now." They surged forward, running from the cellar into the chaotic street outside. The sun hung low in the sky, casting golden rays through the smoke of battle. They sprinted toward the alleyway, dodging the sounds of gunfire and shouts behind them. Anna glanced back and caught sight of Matthias, his face set in grim determination as he fought to cover their escape. "Keep going," he urged through gritted teeth, firing back at the advancing soldiers. Anna's heart raced, knowing that every moment counted. They slipped through the alley, their bodies pressing against the cool stone walls as they maneuvered toward the railway tracks. But as they turned the last corner, a grim sight met their eyes. Another squad of soldiers was waiting for them. "Split up," Anna shouted, her instincts kicking in, head for the tracks. The group scattered, ducking into doorways and side streets to evade capture. Anna sprinted toward the railway tracks, her breath heavy as she pushed through the pain in her leg. She could hear the distant sounds of gunfire echoing behind her, but pressed on, fueled by the hope of freedom. As she reached the tracks, she glanced back to see Klaus and several others emerging from the alley. "This way," she called, and they quickly followed her to the safety of the shadowy railway embankment. The sound of footsteps grew louder, and Anna's heart raced. They had to cross the tracks before the soldiers caught up to them. Together, the group moved stealthily, their hearts pounding with each step. Just as they reached the other side, a flush of movement caught Anna's eye. A soldier appeared on the opposite side of the tracks, calling for backup. "They're over here," he shouted. Panic surged through her as the realization struck time was running out. "Get down," Anna yelled, pushing Klaus and the others to the ground. The soldier raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Matthias appeared, sprinting back to their side of the tracks. With an expert aim, he took down the soldier, the echo of the gunshot reverberating through the air. "Go, go, go," Matthias urged, signaling for them to keep moving. They pressed onward, their bodies laced with urgency, navigating the dense underbrush that bordered the tracks. They could hear voices in the distance, the Gestapo regrouping. They had to reach the safe house, had to warn the others about the reinforcements on their way. Anna led the group along the tracks, her mind racing with a mix of fear and hope. As they approached the old safe house, a dilapidated building that had once served as a railway depot, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. "Over here," she shouted, ushering everyone inside. They ducked through a side door just as the sounds of pursuit drew nearer. Inside, the dim light illuminated the remnants of the past, dust motes swirling in the air. Once inside, they quickly barricaded the door, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Anne turned to the group, breathing heavily. "We need to lay low for now. They'll be searching everywhere." Klaus leaned against the wall, his face pale but resolute. "Do we have any way to contact the others?" Anna shook her head, frustration gnawing at her. "Not yet. We'll all have to wait until they're safe." The minutes dragged into hours, the tension in the air thick with uncertainty. They listened intently, straining to hear any signs of the Gestapo nearby. The last remnants of hope flickered like a candle in the darkness. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps approached, and Anne's heart sank. Had they found them? She held her breath, the air thick with anticipation. But then, a familiar voice pierced through the silence. It asked to open up. Relief washed over Anna as she recognized Matthias's voice. She hurried to the door, throwing it open to reveal a group of their comrades, battered but alive. "We thought we lost you," Matthias exclaimed, rushing inside. "Not yet," Anna replied, a small smile forming on her lips. "The Gestapo won't stop until they find us." The room filled with a sense of renewed camaraderie as they gathered together, sharing updates and devising a plan. They exchanged stories of their narrow escapes, realizing just how close they had come to being captured. As the night wore on, they took turns keeping watch, their spirits buoyed by the realization that they were still alive, still fighting. Anna felt an unbreakable bond forming among them, a collective determination to resist the tyranny that sought to crush their spirit. In the quiet moments, Anna thought of the future. They envisioned a Germany free from oppression, a nation where ideals of liberty and justice could flourish once more. The road ahead would be fraught with danger, but they had each other, and together they would rise to the challenge. As dawn broke, illuminating the hidden corners of the world outside, Anna felt a sense of hope. They would not give up. The Kreisau Circle would continue to resist, to fight for a brighter future, and to honor the sacrifices of those who had come before them. With renewed determination, they began preparing for their next move. They would take down the regime that had brought so much suffering, one act of defiance at a time. The fight was far from over, but Anna knew that as long as they had each other, their spirits would never be extinguished. The road to freedom was long and treacherous, but the spirit of resistance burned brightly within them. Together, they would face whatever came their way, united in their quest for liberation. With each step forward, they would honor the memory of those who had fallen, forging a path toward a future where hope reigned.